So get this. A single decision made in Mexico City has just sent this massive billion-dollar shockwave all the way across the globe. And it's making everyone ask a pretty huge question. Are we watching the first shots being fired in a new global trade war? All right, so let's break this down. It all kicked off with this really sudden, totally unexpected announcement that basically blindsided international automakers. I mean, they were completely caught off guard. So the date was December 12th, 2025. And on that day, Mexico just dropped an absolute bombshell. They announced these massive new tariffs on imports from India and a bunch of other Asian countries. And you know which sector got hit the hardest? Yep, automobiles. And just to give you some perspective here, the tariff on cars was 20%. The new rate, a staggering 50%. I mean, think about that. That's more than double, practically overnight. And the financial fallout? It's huge. We're talking about $1 billion in annual car exports from India to Mexico. $1 billion. And all of that is now at risk because of this one single policy change. You know, this isn't just some abstract number on a spreadsheet. This really affects some of the biggest names you know in the auto industry. We're talking Volkswagen, Hyundai, Nissan. They all use India as this major manufacturing and export hub. In fact, get this, VW's Indian arm alone makes up almost half of all these exports. And for India, well, Mexico is an absolutely crucial market. It's their third largest destination for car exports in the world. So this all leads to the big question, right? Why on earth would Mexico do this? I mean, it could end up hurting their own consumers with higher car prices. Well, the answer seems to lie just a little bit north of their border. And this is where we really start to see the geopolitical game playing out. So the official story from Mexico is, we're protecting local jobs, we're protecting our own industry, but analysts and private sector groups, they're telling a very different story. They're pointing to intense, and I mean intense, pressure from the United States to get in line with its trade policy and start cutting ties with Asia. And look, experts on the ground, people like Oscar Ocampo from the Mexican Institute for Competitiveness, they are not pulling any punches. He's basically saying this is Mexico caving to U.S. influence, especially with these big reviews of the USMCA, that's the free trade agreement that replaced NAFTA, coming up. Okay, so to really understand why the U.S. is putting on this pressure, we've got to zoom out a bit. Because this decision in Mexico, it didn't just happen in a vacuum. Nope. It's part of a much, much larger, and you could say much more aggressive, shift in U.S. trade policy happening under the second Trump administration. And I want to be clear, we are not talking about minor tweaks here. In early 2025, the average U.S. tariff rate literally skyrocketed from just 2.5% all the way up to an estimated 27%. That is the highest it has been in over 100 years. And it's all being driven by two really powerful and pretty controversial new tools. Okay, so first up, you've got something called the reciprocal tariff. The idea is actually pretty simple, though it's aggressive. It's basically you hit us, we hit you back. If a country puts a tariff on a U.S. product, the U.S. is going to slap the exact same tariff on one of their products. The official goal here? To drive bilateral trade deficits down to zero. And then there's the second tool, and this one is maybe even more of a game changer. It's the secondary tariff. And this is where things get really complicated. It's a policy that punishes other countries not for how they trade with the U.S., but for who they trade with elsewhere. It's almost like saying, if you're friends with my enemy, you're my enemy too. And listen, this is not just some theory or a threat. It has already happened. On August 1st, 2025, the U.S. did exactly this. They slapped a 25% secondary tariff on India. Why? For buying Russian oil. So you can see, this is the kind of pressure that makes a country like Mexico really think twice about who its trading partners are. So as you can probably imagine, these pretty aggressive moves from the U.S. haven't just gone unanswered. Oh no. The other major economic powers around the world, they aren't just sitting back and taking it. They are actively pushing back. And here's what that retaliation actually looks like. It's this escalating tit-for-tat cycle. It's crystal clear. The U.S. hits them with a tariff, and then key partners and rivals, we're talking everyone from Canada to China to the European Union, they immediately fire back, targeting billions of dollars of American goods. It's a classic trade war playbook, right? Every single action has an immediate and very costly reaction. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about tariffs and retaliation and geopolitics, But what does all this actually mean for businesses, for our supply chains, and probably most importantly, for you, for the average person? Let's break down the real-world cost of all this. You know, sometimes the simplest explanation is the best one. This comment from a Reddit user just cuts right through all the complicated economic jargon and gets straight to the point. When countries start taxing each other's stuff, the price of that stuff just goes up for everyone. So when you boil it all down, this new era of protectionism has these huge, far-reaching consequences. First, it hits your wallet. We're talking higher prices for all of us, on basically everything, from cars to clothes. That's the most direct hit. And why are prices going up? Well, because it's causing chaos in our global supply chains, these incredibly complex systems that were built for efficiency, not for trade wars. And that chaos forces businesses everywhere to make really tough choices about where to build their products and where to sell them. It sparks this mad scramble to innovate and just find ways to deal with all these new political risks. It's pretty much exactly what economists always warn about. Policies like this don't just raise prices, they mess with the entire market. So when you put all the pieces together, you've got the surprise tariff in Mexico, these sweeping new policies from the US, the retaliation from around the globe, and the very real cost that hit all of us, it becomes pretty clear that we are at a really pivotal moment for the entire global economy. I mean, the events of this past year, they strongly suggest that the fundamental rules of how the world does business are being rewritten right in front of us. That whole consensus that's been around for decades, open markets, free trade, it really looks like it's starting to fracture. And that leaves all of us with a pretty big question. What does the next chapter even look like?